How are you this morning? We are glad you're here. If you would, take a moment and put your name and your location right there in the chat, and we are going to get going in just a few moments.
Yes, so welcome. So good to have you here with us.
Not sure why that's
We
down.
seem to be little and going small.
Be little.
Do we have the slides up?
I don't think the slide is up.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's see what we got going here.
Okay. Well, we're here on Duzie Live, and this is the first time this has ever happened. So we are small, and there's a nice big blank space. Are we live?
We are live. If anyone's in the chat.
Hey, David, welcome from the UK.
Hey.
David, we're just checking with you. In our screen, it appears that the two of us are small in the corner. Are you seeing us big side by side, or are you seeing us small in the corner? Welcome everybody else who's here in the chat with us. We on our end are seeing ourselves small and are wondering what you're seeing. And we'd like to welcome you to Duzie Live, Good Grief with Kim Kukura.
Both are small in the corner. Both
Yeah,
are small.
we're all small in the corner. I'm not quite sure what happened here.
Kim, if you would for a moment, if you, let me see, how would I do this? Should she go out and come back in and open it up?
No, I think you should just reset it.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do, everyone. We're going to hit a reset, and this all should come right back up, hopefully in the normal way.
Everybody stay right where you are. I'd like to welcome David from the UK, Robert and Rob. Oh, cool. Nice to have you with us. Direne coming in from the Philippines. Cheryl from Michigan. I think I saw, let me see. Hannah, you're welcome in from the UK. And Rachel from Germany. Yeah, you see a black screen. We're going to try to reset it. Yeah?
We're going to try to reset. So
just everybody stay where you're at. It's supposed to work. We're just going to reboot and see if we can get it going again. It's rebooting. We pray it will work. Well, it looks like that did the number for us.
Hello.
Jim, turn your video back on again.
Okay.
That's the blue button.
The blue circle.
Audio. Okay.
Okay, hello again. Now we're back again. There's Kim. Excellent. Now we're back again, and if you don't mind, put your name again in and where you're coming from. I think we got most of you, but we just want to make sure we know who's in. It appears at our end that we're back in the normal way again. Normality restored. Thank you, David,
I've
for that.
always wondered what would happen if I pushed the yellow button.
And it says panic button. We were not panicking, but we got the button to reset.
So hopefully we'll get more people coming back in. We lost a few. Welcome back.
Richard from Hamburg. I didn't see you earlier. Rahel is saying hi, Kim. Kim, can you see the chat as well?
Yes. Hi, Rahel.
Yeah. So we have our special guest with us today, and this is Kim Kukura, and she's with us. And Kim, where are you coming in from today?
Coming in from Virginia Beach, Virginia, USA.
Virginia Beach, and we're coming from south of Atlanta ourselves. And Kim is our special guest to talk with us today about good grief.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for her to unpack so much of what's going on here.
So we got a few more people coming into the chat here. Welcome from India. Welcome from UK. Welcome from Belgium and USA and UK and UK. And I'm okay. Are you okay? Philippines, Germany. This is really good.
Carolyn, nice to have you, and Nancy coming in from Belgium. Manoy from India. So good to have you. Oh, awesome. And Matthias, thanks for jumping in.
Mom and Dad, welcome.
All right.
Looks like we've
This
got
is
more
good.
jumping in as well. Thank you for
This is
just putting
good.
in where you're coming in from.
Well, we have a lot to get through today, so I'm going to roll the beginning video, and then we are going to begin. So we're going to start in just a moment with Duzie Live.
Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, welcome back. This is Duzie Live, specifically talking about good grief. And I just wanted to start off by telling one of my stories, because I'm going to sit down and I'm going to totally enjoy this one today, taking notes. But the reason why this is so important to me, I remember back one time where Susie and I went to a funeral, and it was an interesting funeral because I didn't know the person who had died. It was a 19-year-old boy who had committed suicide, but we were friends with the family of the girlfriend. It was really a complicated situation, but it was the first time in my life that I really experienced wailing and deep grieving and cries like I had never heard before. And I thought, wow, that is grieving. But then as I back away from that, I see there's several times in my life where it hasn't been losing a person, but losing something, maybe a dream, maybe a friendship because of moving away, or a disagreement, something that brought that same feeling that I felt back at that little stone church where people were grieving. It's that unexplainable thing that I think, I don't know, from a girl's point of view, because I've never been one, but from a guy's point of view, it's like, I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't be, just make that go away. I just get busy. I just want to somehow forget that. But it's those times when I've been able to stop and really process that emotion,
Yes.
that loss, that transition, that huge question mark, that dark space in front of me. When I've been able to process that, I've been able to move forward. And that's why we titled this Good Grief, because it isn't a mistake that grief happens. God does not intend for us to live in the loss. He wants us to move past it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what today is about. And I'm really excited because there's always things in my life that I'm transitioning into and out of. Today, I go buy a puppy. This is a great day. No grieving today. But tonight, about 3 o'clock in the morning, when this 8-week-old puppy decides he has to go to the bathroom for the 10th time, I may be grieving at that point.
You might say good grief.
I may say just grief. But anyway, I'll turn it over to you with some questions.
Yeah, so grief is something very, very interesting. Like Kim was talking about in the intro. I don't know if you saw the intro or the pre-roll, but we'll get there. Grief is usually associated with death, like Dan was talking about. But grief is something that happens in many seasons of our life. And I just wonder if any of you have ever experienced grief in any way, shape, or form. Just in the chat, just write yes. And you don't exactly know what we mean by that, and we're going to get there very, very shortly. But if you have experienced grief or think you have experienced grief in any way, just write the word yes right in the comment. And then meanwhile, Kim, I'm going to invite you to be in the space here and tell us a little bit. I'm seeing yes.
Can I also ask this question? If you are a yes and it's happening right now, if you're feeling grief at this moment, just write a now, N-O-W. Just put in now.
So we're
Because then we sort of know, is this something from the past? Is this something we're dealing with right now? And I'm going to go take some notes.
All right. So Dan's going to join you all in the chat. Thank you. So we've got some yeses and we've got some yeps for those of you who are in the ABCs of creativity. We're like, yep. So all the versions of yep. And I'm seeing some nows. Now.
Yeah.
Kim, we're going to get to know you a little bit in a few moments. But right now, just tell us about grief, would you please?
Certainly. Well, I want to share with you, I've been sitting here sorting through my backpack, and I was born with an empty backpack. I was born with an empty backpack and bright eyes. But over time in my life, I experienced things like a broken heart, just changes in general as I grew up, unexpected illness. I was bullied as a child. I even questioned my faith and thought maybe God had left me. I went through a divorce. All of these stones accumulated in my backpack. It was heavy, and these little stones began to feel like large boulders that I was carrying around. And oh, wow. Well, I'm thankful that this brought me to Jesus. I had to come to the greatest loss of my life, and that was when I went through a divorce, that would bring me to face my grief directly and begin to unpack the backpack and be able to talk about it so that I could have a better today and tomorrow as I dealt with yesterday. Oops.
We need your video on. If you can push your video button.
Yes. It says my connection's low at the moment, but
Okay.
my heart connection is strong.
That's good. Kim, you told us that's such a practical way to look at it with the stones and just identifying. Thank you for being so vulnerable, all the different areas that you've experienced grief in. I would just love to know, like, how did you get started? Now you're a grief specialist, and you love to educate and you love to partner with people in the process of grief. How did you get started with all of this? Can you tell us a little bit of your story?
Yes. Well, as I shared a little bit through the stones that I've sorted through, yes, I had a normal life of now what I understand to be normal losses. Oh, there I am.
Yeah.
To be normal losses that accumulated over time, and again, and it did bring me back to the Lord. He was the ultimate answer in that. However, I needed the right tools. There's this idea of trying to paint a room with a saw, a hammer, a screwdriver. That makes a mess. I didn't have the right tools to directly address my grief. And so when the time came for my first marriage, I was married for 25 years. When that time came, when that marriage ended, thankfully, I was being discipled, and the woman discipling me wanted to go through this workbook, the Grief Recovery Handbook, because she had had some verbal and physical abuse in her past. And so we went through that material, and it was life-changing. So as I then, a year later, met my husband, Ken, and then 3 years later, we were on the Logos Hope, serving. And
Which is where we met.
And as the time came to serve on the Logos Hope, I was praying and seeking the Lord, how should I prepare? And that is when everything aligned for me to be able to go and be certified as a grief recovery specialist. And that was how I was led to prepare for the mission field.
Yeah. Wow, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So many times when you're in that space, now I know that you're a registered nurse, and you have some other like tools in your pocket, life tools. What has been your recent job, and what are you currently doing in work?
Okay. Well, about a year ago, the U.S. had a government shutdown, so Ken and he couldn't renew his license to go back to the mission field, to go back to the ship, his Marine license. So we are home. I'm working in a local psychiatric hospital. I've been managing the psychiatric emergency room until yesterday. I began as the infection control nurse educator. So here the Lord has plopped me in an infection control role in the middle of a pandemic.
Wow. So this is like transition, right?
Yes.
And one of the definitions that I love that you gave us about grief, and I just want to read it here because it was so good. all of my many notes. I got to turn a few pages back. You said grief is the ending or change, or the mixed emotions that are connected
Yes.
to an ending or change in a familiar pattern.
That's right.
So
That's right.
you're going through that yourself, aren't
I
you?
sure am. And I have had some mixed feelings, yes, but I have learned how to directly express them and be heard by another living person. That's an important part of this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kim, when I think of you, and I have experienced you and the effect of you and so many of our friends on board the ship, just you have the biggest heart of love and compassion and extreme empathy for people. So for you to be in this area of grief and as an educator partner, wow, we are just blessed to have you. And I would love if you would just take us through. I know you've prepared some training, some training that you would like to just take us through. And I'm going to go down small, and I'm going to let you be also there with me. But can you just take us through this good grief and just help us understand what that actually means?
Yes, absolutely. So, yes, this is good grief, and it's helped, as I said, about my grief stones for yesterday and today and tomorrow. So we'll talk about the goals of what we're going to discuss. And we've got some polls, so this will be interactive, and looking forward to that. But so we want to define grief and how is it good. Identify reasons it's misunderstood and how it impacts really children, youth, and adults. Discuss the source of our grief, and identify ways to relieve it, some of the grief we carry. So and look for these aha moments throughout. Some of the slides have some aha moments that you may be able to relate to. Yeah. So here we are, grief defined. Just like Susie said, it is the normal and natural response to a loss of any kind. Grief by any other name is still grief. We hear the phrase burnout, we hear PTSD. It is also the conflicting feelings caused by the end or change in something familiar, especially if there was an emotional connection to that pattern or that, it's the feeling of reaching for someone one more time and to discover they're not there. And the sense of having unfinished business, such as a disappointment or regrets. So the aha is what's already been stated, that it's not just about mourning and bereavement. Losses are both tangible things that I can touch and feel, and intangible. Yeah.
All right, Kim, you poured a few things out there. Yeah. I'm putting a poll up of those of you who are in the chat, we want to know, what would you like to talk more specifically about? And you have a choice. So would you like to talk about the normal and natural reaction to grief and loss, conflicting feelings, feeling of reaching out, or the sense of having unfinished business? So at the moment, Kim, it's conflicting feelings and sense of having unfinished business. And it just turned to a higher point of unfinished business, and following shortly is conflicting feelings. So you want to start with the unfinished feelings. Thank you for voting, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, the unfinished business. Oh my goodness. This can be when there is like a sudden end or a move, or like I said, that change in a pattern, and there's a sense of having undelivered communication, that there's something that you wish you'd been able to say to someone, there's something that you wish had been heard by someone, but because of the circumstances, whatever they may be, you have not had that opportunity to communicate or to be heard. Even if you have communicated, you do not feel like you've been heard. So that leaves this unfinished business. It could be that you never got to say thank you. It could be that you regret an action and you never got to say I'm sorry. So these are examples of unfinished business.
Well, that's great. Kim, we also have quite a number who have talked about conflicting feelings. Would you like to address that as well, please?
Certainly, certainly. Dan's example is a great one to start with. Getting a puppy. That is a very happy and exciting experience. However, there are some losses associated with that. You are losing maybe some sleep, losing some of your freedom because you are now needing to attend to this puppy. So it's just those mixed feelings, natural and normal. And we'll talk more about the tools we've been unhelpful tools that we've all been probably taught to deal with this. But in death, often we'll hear they're in a better place. And some people, for some folks, it's like, yes, she's not suffering anymore, and I'm happy about that. But on the other hand, I'm so thankful. On the other hand, I feel guilty for feeling that way. So just mixed feelings of, even in this time, in this pandemic, we may be enjoying, on one hand, the sense of slowing down the pace of life, but on the other hand, there may be fears of us or loved ones getting sick. So just, you can see this is universal for almost any situation. We're going to have these conflicting feelings, but especially when there's a change in a familiar pattern or loss of a relationship.
Kim, I've got a question in the chat here. I'm just going to pull out. Megan asks, could unfinished business be when you're hoping for something and it doesn't happen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you have not had an opportunity to directly communicate that to another living person who's willing to just hear you and be a heart with ears and help you work through that, absolutely. That's unfinished business. And it can also feel like unfinished business with God. It can feel like there's something, a disappointment there, and it's okay. That's okay too. It's okay that we can directly address that with Him. And again, another living being. It's important to be heard by another human being in these expressions.
Yeah. Tell us about the examples and the impact.
Okay. Well, this shows how universal it is. It starts with our binkies and blankies and bottles. Think about a baby, a toddler, and one of the first changes they experience is something that's been a comfort to them. Now they're all of a sudden, for some reason, too big or too old for it, and it's time for it to be removed. And so this is how young this can start. And then often the death of a pet, estrangement from friends. You all see the list there. You probably, maybe it's jogging memories of other kinds of losses that you've had. And then, of course, there's death, divorce, health changes, job changes, financial changes, and end of addiction. That's one that surprises people sometimes because when someone has been comforted by a substance or a behavior, an addictive behavior, and now they have sobriety from that behavior, that is definitely an end to a familiar pattern of comfort, and there is grief that person goes through in that change.
That's a definite surprise for me. Yeah, good you put that right there in the list.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's what are called the intangible losses, loss of trust. Like it's not a person, place, or thing, but there's been a loss of trust with someone, a loss of safety. In this pandemic time, a loss of control. And sometimes, like I said, a loss of faith, loss of respect, loss of self-respect. Maybe if we've done something we regret. And then moral losses, as we see maybe our government making decisions whatever country you're living in, you may be pleased with decisions and you may be horrified by decisions, but that can be a moral loss as you see those decisions being made. And then, of course, the loss of hopes and dreams and expectations. Yeah. And so it's okay to grieve. Like these are things during the pandemic that Laura Jack, who put together this list, she was one of my trainers, and she's just really great about bringing this home. So Many people would say, oh, these aren't big deals, but these were things that we were hoping for. These are examples of things that we were hoping to celebrate. And yeah, so it's okay to grieve these things. Yeah.
All right, it's time for another poll. And here's our poll. Would you like to talk more about tangible losses? Those were the first ones on Kim's list there. People, places, or things, or intangible losses, things that we can't touch, feel. What would you like to vote about? The tangible losses or the intangible losses? And Kim will go deeper into whichever one you vote on. The votes are coming in. So far, it's the intangible losses are at 100%.
Okay.
Let's see if there's anybody else. So maybe you just start with the intangible losses.
Certainly. These also start early in life. It can start with a broken promise by a parent, or a clique at school where you don't feel included. We start with a loss of trust or loss of security. And it can go on to like a first relationship, a dating relationship where we have a broken heart. But see, when a relationship ends, that's a little more tangible. But what we forget about are the intangible associations with that relationship, such as we always did this on Tuesday. This is what we ate together every Saturday. There are just these patterns of behavior that we just forget are just such a part of even the loss of a person or a place. And then, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about the tangible losses. I'm just going to jump in right here.
Yes, please.
Megan says, I think the tangible losses are much easier for people to understand.
Yes.
When you can see and touch it and there's a reason for it, then we're able to grieve. I think intangible is much more difficult for people to know how it's difficult for people to know how to support you when it's intangible.
Right. And honestly, the support is the same. The support is the same. If you know what, like this person maybe is not in my life, but what are the things you're missing about the relationship? What are the things you did together? What's been hard there? And we're going to talk more about this, about how to have the conversation as we go forward. But another loss that people sometimes don't know how to think of as a loss is a miscarriage. And that's clearly a loss, but because the parents haven't been able to hold a child in front of us, sometimes we forget that this loss is real. This is actually a tangible loss. But then think of all the hopes and dreams and expectations that were connected with this child. So that's another one that sometimes people don't realize.
Yeah, a couple more questions.
Okay.
I'm going to put these together and you might answer them together or separately. Rob asks, how do you grieve? And another question from David is, so grief and loss are very closely intertwined. What makes loss so difficult? And Irene is asking, is lack of or limited communication considered as intangible losses? And then Carolyn's also talking about communication and how do you communicate it when it's intangible?
Yes, absolutely. Anything limited that you would hope would be more is a feeling of loss. And we're really taught how to accumulate things. We're really not taught how to lose things, if you think about it. So we really just don't have a frame of reference for loss. We're not even taught that it's normal as we go through life. So the loss event happens, like this is taken away, my hands are empty, and now my heart responds with the mixed emotions of grief. And as we go forward, we're going to look at the misinformation that we've been taught, and I think that will help us start to identify what proper tools we can learn to implement.
Kim, I love that picture of you put our hand out and it's gone, and now it's our heart that goes into our hands. I think that's such a powerful picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I want to let y'all know, like, there are normal responses to grief, and these are typical. I mean, what's normal? It's a setting on the dryer, right? So typical losses could be reduced concentration, sense of numbness, not feeling present, a change in sleep patterns, change in eating patterns or habits, a desire to review the relationship with the person, place, or thing, or hope or dream. You want to just review that over and over. Wishing some things had been different or better. And a roller coaster of emotional energy, which is why we've got that little picture there hanging on for dear life. Yeah.
Kim, let's just put up our poll right now. And this poll is asking, which responses can you relate to the most? And all of those that are listed up there on the slide are there, including all of the above. So which one hits you the most, or can you relate to? Have you experienced or seen? And we'd love to hear from you. So the polls are coming in. At the moment, it keeps changing, but at the moment we've got it's roller coaster of emotional energy, and all of the above are coming in the lead. And then following very closely is wishing some things had been different and a sense of numbness.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to speak to us about the roller coaster of energy, wishing things were different, and the numbness that are felt? Can you take that a little deeper for us, please?
Yes. Well, you see in the roller coaster of emotional energy, I have bolded the word motion. With grief comes emotional energy. So you have got energy that you may not know what to do with. And we're going to talk later about some of the common ways we handle that emotional energy that could become unhelpful. But it's normal to have this energy. That is normal. It may come out in tears and the wailing that Dan talked about, yelling, lamenting, but this energy will be expressed. And so to know some healthy ways to directly express it and address it is part of why we're here today. Yeah. Wishing some things had been different. That goes back to our unfinished business. If you've got unfinished business with associated with the loss, that is going to be very normal to wish things had been different in either the way you treated someone or the way they treated you or the way the circumstances unfolded. And then there was one more, sense of numbness. Was that the other one? I'll talk about that. A sense of numbness, like I said, it's a feeling like you're not fully present because you're this is an overwhelming experience sometimes, especially if losses are coming from several different directions, the perfect storm, if you will. And so what I try to help people do when they feel themselves drifting is to say, okay, wait, what do I see? What do I hear? And what do I smell right now? Again, it's normal for that to happen, for that drift to kind of happen, but you can practice ways of helping bring yourself back to the present moment just by your 5 senses. What am I touching right now? Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting. Yeah. All right. Oh, you got me. Okay. All right. So here are 6 major myths, but unfortunately, they are the common intellectual information that we're given to deal with grief. As we've already shown, grief is a matter of the heart, but the tools we're given are intellectual, therefore unhelpful. So here are 6 of the common major myths that we see. Don't feel bad. And a lot of times this will start with, at least this didn't happen, or they're in a better place. replace the loss. And this statement often looks like if there's more fish in the sea, you'll find someone else. Or if there's a pet loss, oh, we'll just go buy another pet. This does nothing to complete the unfinished business with that first pet, right? Be strong. Don't show any cracks in your strength or in your faith. Be strong. And people will literally say this. Be strong for yourself. Be strong for your family. And we know that we can be strong in our faith, but that doesn't mean that we put on a mask and a fake smile and pretend. And then time heals. You may have heard time heals all wounds. Just give it time. Well, over time, what happens? Oh, my video went away, but I was just picking up a pile of my rocks. We accumulate more loss, and it becomes heavier if we don't have a way to directly address it. The next one is stay busy. And staying busy is just a way to pass more time. It doesn't complete the unfinished business. So we begin to lose trust, and we begin to see people are uncomfortable with our grief, so we grieve alone. Often this is not a direct message that we're given. It is one that we pick up on by other people's reactions to us when we try to be authentic. So the aha here is these are caught early, beginning around age 3, and they're solidified by ages 13 to 15. So we're all born bright-eyed babies, and often by the time middle school happens or intermediate school, whatever it is called in your country, the light can start to go out in our eyes, and it's because we have picked up on these unhelpful ways of dealing with our losses. And you see the ribbon there with the X through it? That means there's no award given for being the strongest griever. The award never comes. And if you've been on the Logos Hope, there's no Lug Oscar for that. There's no Academy Award. It just doesn't come. What we get is just a heavier backpack. Yeah. Okay. And Susie, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if we're in the middle of another poll, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about how faith is different than feelings. Can everyone hear me? Oh, poll time. Okay, I see it's poll time. All right. But I can't hear Susie, so I'll need someone in the chat to let me know what you want me to speak more about. There you are. Be strong. Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to just put on my handy dandy glasses and read a little bit from Be Strong. Okay. So you might hear things like, don't fall apart, get a hold of yourself, or we may say, I'm fine. And fine stands for feelings I'm not expressing. That's what the word fine can stand for. So what can happen? We begin to feel drained if we feel like we have to be strong. That means just keeping a straight face, not showing our emotion. And remember, there's a lot of emotional energy that we are now holding inside. That is exhausting. And there is another piece to this, which is be strong for others. And that one might sound like your family needs you to be strong during this time. And the effect of that is we want the approval of others, but then discover there's no award given for pretending to be fine. So it's really just about trying to be strong, to hold in that emotional energy and not show it. And it's often because others don't seem comfortable with it. But we can now begin, as we learn, to help others learn that this is normal and natural to express these emotions. And it's healthy. It's how we're designed. Shall we go to the next slide? Oh, replace the loss. Okay. All right, replace the loss. All right. So this is where we're hearing there are plenty of fish in the sea. You're young, you'll find another girlfriend, you'll find another boyfriend, we'll get a new pet next week, or have a cookie, you'll feel better. This is where someone tries to give us something or encourage us to replace something else in our hands so that we'll feel better. But really all it does is make us feel different. And the illusion of feeling different, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit, kind of temporarily will satisfy us, but it doesn't do anything to complete the unfinished business. Okay. Yeah. Were there any others you wanted me to talk more about? Let's see. Okay. All right. Shall we go on to the next slide? Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me now or no?
I can hear you now.
Oh, I don't know what happened, but here we go. That's good. Okay. So we have a question. The joy of the Lord is your strength.
Yes.
What do we do when we hear that phrase, when we don't feel strong or joyful?
Let's go to the next slide, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. Okay. So in addition to these unhelpful intellectual responses, we may find ourselves encouraging others or being encouraged to have more faith. And while we know every word of Scripture is absolutely true, unless we can complete the unfinished business around our losses, they'll just continue to accumulate. So the way that I say this is let faith empower the process of recovery. Yes, the joy of the Lord is your strength, but there's also scripture about waiting on the Lord, and then your strength will rise. So the Lord knows we're not always going to be strong. And it's just the strength is not about pretending. It's being authentic and getting some completion and letting the faith and the power of the Lord empower that process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. Kim, we've got a question here from Michaela that says, how do you walk this line between grief and faith? You talked about emotions and faith are different. Love to hear more about that, please. Okay.
Certainly. Well, I will say, and this is not part of my certification. My certification actually does not involve scripture because they realize many people have grief toward God. And so they want it to be a safe place for people who, if you know atheists or agnostic people, this is what I've learned. There's a good chance they've had a loss of faith. There has been a grief in their life where they have unfinished business with God, and it looks to us and it feels like to them there can't be a God and they're not living with God. So that's just a little extra help for you in this subject matter. But here's what I'll say. And this is Kim, not my training, talking. We are created in the image of a grieving God. If you read in the Old Testament, all through, you see our Father God expressing his disappointment in humanity when he has given them every good thing. And he expresses it very openly, very graphically. He does not mince words. And in all of this, he is looking to completion, which we see on the cross with Jesus Christ saying, "It is finished." So our model for grieving is the Father, it is the Son, Jesus, who wept, and it is the Holy Spirit who groans. So they are our model. This idea of being strong apart from faith does not come from them. It comes from people living in their intellect versus in their heart. They just need to drop down about 8 to 12 inches and get here. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, Kim, that's really powerful what you're talking about, the cross completion. Megan also says, and I think this is quite true, I think there's a lot in faith communities that doesn't even allow for grief. Everyone just quotes you a Bible verse and says,
Yeah.
I just want you to smile and get over it. You know, they don't allow you to be in that space where you are. And that is grief.
Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing. Sometimes the work we have to do as we grieve, and the grief recovery process does lead us to very biblical principles of saying I'm sorry, saying thank you, and saying I forgive you. And sometimes the first people we have to forgive are the people who've taught us these ways of addressing grief, these unhelpful ways. So usually in the work, we usually have people start with their parents, where they've learned these principles or these unhelpful ways of coping, so that they can just get that part clear, get those griefs unpacked, and have room now to learn a new belief system that will be helpful in addressing grief.
Let's go to a poll, Kim.
Okay.
Which of the grief actions would you like to talk more about? I think this is that an appropriate time for that?
Sure.
So validate and acknowledge grief and trauma, avoid myth statement. Maybe this is the teaching from the next slide, is it?
Let's see.
No,
that comes later. That comes later, what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so hold on this one. Okay, we'll pause the poll for a moment.
Pause the poll.
Okay, you can have a look at it for later, but that's where we're going.
Okay.
Take us through this disturbs, Kim. I find this part so amazing.
Yeah. So, as we said, in grief, there are mixed feelings, and with those feelings it's emotions, it's emotional energy, motion, and it's because we're given other things to help us feel better, but really it just makes us feel different. Any of these behaviors or activities, if they're done to cover feelings, they can have a negative impact on grieving people, because they can become unhealthy patterns, and then we can have losses as a result of those unhealthy patterns we've developed to address the first loss. So the AHA down there, and they're called short-term energy relieving behaviors, and we just abbreviate that STIRBs. Yes, it's disturbing. STIRBs. Yeah. So some of these are very neutral or even beautiful activities, but when they are done in a way to cover up feelings or to avoid it's the only way we know how to either numb down our emotional energy or express it. They can just, like I said, become unhealthy patterns. And here's why. Down there at the AHA, when we're offered ways to help us feel better without taking care of the cause of the loss, it's only a short-term relief. It gives us the illusion of feeling better, and it's temporary. So we never get to the root cause or complete the unfinished business, and the emotional pain just continues to be carried in our heart, which is why, again, when people give us scripture, it's wonderful, but we can't put scripture on top of pain in our heart. We've got to also be expressing out the pain in our heart authentically. And yeah. So even religious activity up there can be something, a way. That is a stirb I've had in my life. I got really involved with the church. I was heading several ministries many years ago, actually. And because there were just some things in my personal life that were hurting, and it was easier to just get busy with church activity during that time. Yeah.
Kim, we've got a couple comments here. One is, I think grief is vulnerable and avoided, pushed down in most cultures.
Yeah.
And then Dan was saying also, I'm not sure we've ever been taught how to grieve anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the huge values that you're bringing to us today. Thank you so much, to just help us unpack this whole area of grieving. Something we're doing, but we don't necessarily know about or have tools.
Yeah.
We're using a screwdriver to paint instead of a paintbrush.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And Michaela also said, I was thinking about that too, Megan. In Western cultures, we're all about our own individual and climbing the ladder, just pushing forward and making things happen.
Yeah. 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 When I was on the Lagos Hope, we have crew from 60 different nations, and I found this topic of grief to be a pretty universal, just mishandled, just life event. It seems pretty universal that this misinformation out. It's universal. Yeah.
Yeah. Another comment from Direne. What are the stages of grief? And I don't think we've actually gone through that. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yes, certainly. So I'm going to turn my whiteboard on. And the stages of grief, those were originally written for a person who is actually in the process of dying. And they discovered there were these stages, this kind of linear process that person would go through as they approach their final moments here on planet Earth. And then others took those stages and applied them to the people that they were leaving behind, but that was never the intent of those stages. So now there's more understanding out there that these stages, and it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, like we're moving toward acceptance. And now there's, Dan told me, and now I've seen it in other places, another stage of meaning, finding meaning through grief. But now there's an acknowledgement that these stages are more like this. There is not a rhyme or reason because it's a roller coaster of emotional energy. So all the best they can do is identify categories, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go through these stages in order, or that you'll even go through all of them. So with my training, we really just focus more on helping you complete unfinished business to get to completion. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. All right.
So you want to go back to your slides?
Yeah. So how is grief good? Finally, we're here.
Good grief.
Good grief. So it's a process. There's a process of recovery. Well, grief is a gift from God to give us that time of process toward hope and recovery. And recovery is the freedom to live in the present moment with love and without fear. And isn't that what we want? We want to live here and now, loving without fear. So while we can't undo what happened, we can do something good about our response, And you see the word response is in the word responsibility. And so what we do is we ask grievers to take 1% responsibility for what's happened to them. And the 1% responsibility is make small, and correct choices in this time of grieving that you've been given to take steps toward hope and recovery. And so we're going to talk more about what those are in the next slide, and then more about how you can get even one-to-one help with this going forward if you would want it. So
Yeah, I love that right down at the bottom, Kim. Thank you for having the courage to join the discussion about good grief. That's already one responsibility, small step.
Yes, bravo.
Woo!
Bravo.
I'm with you, cheering everybody on.
Yes, yes. All right, so here is our good grief relief. What can we do to come alongside others who are grieving? Or what can we hope to express ourselves to someone so that we can start to complete our own grief? So here are some step-by-step good grief relief steps. So we're going to validate and acknowledge grief and trauma. We're going to avoid those myth statements that we talked about, those 6 myths. And we're going to say something like, I can't imagine. I'm here with you. I can't imagine. We're not going to compare our loss. We are going to just be right there with them and theirs. We're going to identify and name the loss, the tangible or the intangible. We're going to let them give voice to what it was. Gosh, it's this feeling like something's missing. Something's just not right. However they would express it, but we're going to give them that time and space to name it. And then we're going to help name feelings. People will tell the story, but what they really want is for you to know how they feel. They want you to hear how it feels for them. And that's another thing we're really not taught. So when we get to our next slide, you'll see that I've got a feelings wheel there. And this has been very helpful to me to be able to say, I'm not even sure how I feel, and to be able to look at that and say, that's it. I can name the feeling now.
Kim, I put that up. The feelings wheel is a downloadable PDF that you prepared for us. So if they want, they can already download that.
Yeah, I highly encourage it. It is in English, but probably you could find it in whatever language you would like or need. But I do encourage you to have this as a resource as you learn to express your feelings and even come alongside others to help them express theirs. Because again, people want us to know and hear how it feels, but they may not have the words to say the feeling. So we may have to help them and maybe even have this wheel here and say, is it like this or like this? Or even just say, is it sad? Is it lonely? And be curious in that with them. Understand that we often, when folks express guilt, it indicates that we wish something had been better or different or more. And this was huge for me, huge for me. So the word guilt implies an intent to harm someone. So that is a time when we can say, did you intend harm in this situation? And if the answer is no, then then we say, could we put the G word, guilt, away? Because I think it might be further hurting you using that word. Could it be that you mean you wish something had been different or better or more in this situation? We want to give folks a voice, or we want to find a safe person that can give us a voice. Being big hearts with ears as they give voice to undelivered communications. So this means saying, what do you wish you could say to that child who, that you had so many hopes and dreams for? What do you, how did you see your life unfolding differently? What do you wish you could say to that person? Or how do you wish that had gone? What do you wish had been heard by that person? What do you wish you'd had the opportunity to say? And then just being a big heart with ears so they can deliver those communications. That's a huge part of completion. Help them identify stimuli that leads to disturbs, and there's more to come on that. If we do a follow-up to this, that might be a topic we talk about. It's possible. And then help them make good choices. Just affirm them. We're having the courage to have this conversation, and just help them make good choices. To keep when the feeling comes up, to text or do something creative to express it. And I think that's coming in the next slide too. Always share it with someone, because again, this is Kim Chaplin speaking. We're the priesthood of believers. We're here to hear each other's hearts, confession, to affirm you're a child of God, you're forgiven, you're not alone. So being that heart with ears is a very real way that we can be the priesthood of believers.
Kim, I'm going to jump in. There's a lot of responses going on here. I love you guys are there in the chat.
Thank you.
Couple of the things I heard you say is we can put away the guilt word. Mm-hmm. So that's an intent to harm us. So we don't have to feel guilty. We can be. And the other one is that when we're processing with people, we can be a big heart with ears.
Yes.
I've never heard that before, but I love that picture. A couple of questions. Michaela asked, what makes grieving so uncomfortable? Two things I was thinking. We feel like a failure and we don't think it's normal. Are there some other reasons?
Well, I really do think it is this universal belief system that we can deal with it intellectually, and we just don't have anything that's helpful in that belief system. So I think that's a huge part of it, but I also think this picture of empty hands and a hurting heart. This is an uncomfortable position to be in, because I want something in my hands. I want to replace the loss. I want something to make me feel different or better. So to actually sit here and instead pour my heart out is just not, it's normal and natural and how we're designed, but it's not normal and natural in the world's way of doing things.
True. We're really at our 60-minute mark, and we're going to go a few more minutes so that we can get here. But Kim, you put it out that there is a possibility for us, for example, next week, to go further in this, especially the disturbs.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if you guys who are here in the chat, would you be interested in taking grief to a second level with Kim, especially about disturbs? Maybe Kim, while they're putting there, if you feel like this would be good, you say yes, S, in case you can't write disturbs. Yes, S. And maybe unpack the disturbs concept one more time, Kim, for us so we know what we're voting about.
Sure. So we've got this emotional energy that comes after a loss, with grief, the conflicting feelings and emotions. So there's emotion and energy in that. What do we do with that energy? And sometimes we don't do very helpful things with that energy. We can take everyday things, and use them to avoid the feelings, and it can become an unhealthy pattern in our life and lead to more loss. So it's very important to start being aware and start looking at our own lives to see, are there things I might be doing to fill this space?
And I'm getting an overwhelming yes, S in the chat. So Thank you, Kim, for preparing it. And as we want to just carry on a little bit more here, for those of you who can stay, please stay. We want to finish Kim's training that she's got going here. And then we were going to go backstage, and we're going to get to all of your great questions. One of the questions that has just come up a little bit here is, how would you share your session, what you're teaching us here, in one sentence? Thank you, David Taylor. Good question.
Great question. Coming alongside grievers is giving them an opportunity to deliver necessary communications to help them toward completion, and to listen as a big heart with ears, without judgment, and with respect and honor of their own uniqueness. That was a long sentence.
It was. I caught giving the grievers a chance to communicate, and we have that big heart and two big ears to listen.
Yeah.
And non-judgmental.
Yeah.
I heard those concepts very, very clearly. And I think you've also demonstrated that so beautifully for us this week, and woohoo, next week too, with the Serbs. Sturbs. Yeah. Do you want to take us through the rest of your training here?
Yes. So there's the feelings wheel that you all can download. And like I said, I highly encourage you to do that. One thing that this really surprised me, when I'm bored or lonely, that goes back to sad. And I guess when I think about it, it doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah.
I get bored a lot, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe as I think about it, maybe I am lonely. And that's why I'm bored. I don't know. So I just thought that just really piqued my interest. So you
Kim, how often do you think we should use this feelings wheel with ourselves or others?
Well, I have one in my journal, so I've just got it as a reference whenever I need it. So it could be as often as you would like to reference it.
Yeah. I love that plug for journaling. Yeah, put that right in your journal. So daily, when we process our life, we can have something to help us put words to what we're experiencing.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
All
Kim.
right. All right, so we're wrapping up now this part of the training, and I just wanted to give you all some of my information here. I do have a Facebook page as a grief recovery specialist. This is my email with my husband Ken, but he doesn't really check it, so it's really my email. My cell number, I am on WhatsApp. Anyway, so if you would want to reach out directly to just ask further questions or anything like that, there's my information. And I do try to post on my Facebook page different things from the grief recovery website. But I also want to make available to you the grief recovery website, thegriefrecoverymethod.com, because they've got people like me on almost every continent, and in most countries. So you can actually go to this website and put in your location and find a grief recovery specialist near you. And then they can go through the very specific steps of completion. We've really just talked more about the principles and some things we can do as we come in contact with others who are grieving. But there are very specific recovery steps to take with someone trained that I just wanted to offer you the opportunity to possibly connect with someone. And then also on the website, there's a blog with many different topics around grief, what we've talked about here today, and many more. There are books, different books. One of them this is one of my favorites, When Children Grieve. It helps parents walk through how to talk with their children about grief. And then there's the Grief Recovery Handbook, just several different books. And then there was one more arrow there. I'm trying to remember. I've lost the slide. But anyway, the website is, there we go. That's right. There's a free ebook download on kind of how to communicate with others who are grieving. Some help and some helps for that. So yeah, I just wanted you all to have that as a resource. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim.
Sure.
Let's see. Now we're back on again.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like we've got 3 screens because you can't see here, but Dan has been running around trying to get our audio working. So we've got 2 microphones.
I thought this would be a really
3
peaceful
headaches.
time. This was not peaceful. Let me show you here. See what's going on.
I've got my peace mug. We're all good.
Listen.
This one. So here is Susie, computer 1, computer 2, Mike that for some reason is not working. And so,
So thank you, Dan, for working it out.
Hey, Dan.
So we want to go into what we call the backstage. And this is where we want to keep answering any of your questions.
Yeah.
And one of the ones I want you to think about for just a moment, Kim, is are we in collective grief right now with the virus? And if so, what's one thing you can recommend in this space?
That's good. It's good. Well, actually, the smaller PowerPoint I put together for backstage will help us talk about that. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Kim, I'm not sure I have your smaller PowerPoint.
Okay. All right. I can resend it. So we really don't label grief with the grief recovery method, but because we believe all grief is collective. It's like we don't, in our support groups, we don't separate out by, say, survivors of suicide or bereavement. We have everyone in the same group so people can understand that grief is a part of life and that we all have the mixed emotions. We all have the temptation of STIRBs. We've all received unhelpful information, and we can all walk through together the small and correct choices toward completion. So I would say we're all experiencing a pandemic right now, but because each person is unique, their relationship to what's happening in this pandemic is going to be unique and different as well. So yes, we're experiencing a collective event, and there's going to be grief, absolutely, but it's going to be unique and different to each griever. Does that help or answer the question?
Yep. Okay. That we're all experiencing it, but in our different ways.
All right, and I'm going to forward you. I don't know if this will work.
I think we're going to have it for next time, Kim.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yep. Just go ahead and talk us through it.
Okay.
Unless you can share your screen.
Oh, yeah, I could do that maybe.
Put it up and then share your screen.
Let's see if it will let me do that. Oh, I think I have too weak of a signal right now.
Okay.
That's all right.
Talk us through it. And for those of you who want, you can download. You can also sign up for the 2:00 webinar today, which is going to be the same information, only completely different. You can have that as a resource for you.
All right, so for backstage, I have something called the Emotional Energy Checklist. And it is just kind of a way of organizing our thoughts and what's in our heart. And it's under the subtopics of changes, challenges, and choices. Changes, challenges, choices. Yes. And so this could be something that we would journal. This could be a conversation that we're having with someone else. But under changes, oh, y'all can see me now. Let's see if I can share my screen. Select window or screen to share.
It's probably going to be your second or third one.
There it is. Okay. Allow.
Good job, Kim.
Can y'all see it? I don't know. No.
Stop for a second.
Okay.
Thank you, Ruth, for joining us. If you do have to leave now, you may. Thank you for being with us for this part. We're now in the backstage. This is bonus material with Kim.
Can you see anything?
We did for a second, but I don't now.
No? Okay. All right. Well, I'll just talk you through it. So under changes, the question is,
Kim,
what?
get out of your share screen. Stop
Oh, okay.
your screen, and
Okay,
then
got it.
there you
Okay.
go.
All
Excellent.
right. Thank you. So the first question is, what's happening for you? How is this situation changing your life? That's the introductory question. How is this situation changing your life? Starts to get us thinking about all of the changes and familiar patterns that we've had in this particular pandemic time. I mean, this could apply to anything, but I'm just talking right now about the pandemic. So sometimes just listing these changes can take away the power of the event. If you just download them from your heart, download them from your mind, and just put them on paper. In a conversation, this is when we'd be listening without diminishing, negating, or comparing the person. We're going to be a heart with ears. And I hope and pray each person on here has a friend or a safe person that can be a heart with ears for them. And if not, you can teach them how to be a heart with ears by just saying, I just need you to listen. And just listen and don't try to fix. I just need to be heard right now. But as we start listing the changes we've experienced, it kind of validates that what we're experiencing is real. It's not our imagination. This is real. Any questions about that?
Very powerful. How is this situation changing your life, and it validates how it's real?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So then we move on to challenges. And as we start to talk about challenges, this kind of takes us a little deeper into our feelings. What challenges do these changes present for you? What are the challenges you're experiencing during this time? This is when you can use the feelings wheel. And in a conversation, we're just going to listen with honor and respect and without judgment, like we said before. And just remember, you may hear or you may be writing down conflicting feelings, and conflicting feelings are known as grief.
That's the definition. Conflicting.
Yes. So a person might feel thankful, they might feel concerned, they might feel guilty, they might feel terrified, all at the same time. It's all valid.
I think that's so powerful right there. If we walk away with nothing else, Kim, when you're feeling conflicting feelings, it's grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a power one.
Yes. Yes. And then again, reframe the G word, the guilt word. For example, if someone's feeling guilty for still being able to work, but there's no intent of harm toward anyone, but it's a wish that it was better or different for their friends or family, help them give voice to that. Are you saying that you wish your friends and family also had work? Because that G word just might be hurting you more by using it. And then choices. We move on to choices. While we can't change the big picture of what's happening, we do have the ability to change or decide how we respond. So this is where you can brainstorm on paper with a friend. How can I respond in this situation? Get creative together. This is the Duzie Creativity Month. This is the time. Draw it, paint it, sing it, lament it, life map it, and share it with someone safe. And making even a small choice can help us feel better. A small choice of just being authentic or drawing that picture, expressing it out. And you chose to come backstage. So another great choice. After having the courage to have the good grief discussion, to join that, you've come backstage, you've gotten these tips on changes, challenges, and choices, and even a small choice can help us feel better.
Yeah. Dale says, true choice empowers.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just want to give a call out. Our hashtag right now is Creatively Alive. And we encourage you to go to the Fully Alive Revolution Facebook group and post something every day. Risk it.
Yes.
Post something. And then we also encourage you to try to comment on at least 2 other people. So we have an engagement, an interaction, a learning from one another.
That's awesome.
Not everybody has something every day, but if you do, put it out there, and that helps us all.
Yes.
I have loved songs created. Megan put a lament in there. We have videos, socks, masks. I can't remember everything else, but such a variety of creativity and being creatively alive. Yeah. Any other questions, comments, emotional outbursts?
Those are welcome.
I'm going to look back meanwhile for questions we might not have hit.
Okay.
Dr. Rob asks us, is it possible to help others grieve when we are grieving? Or can that make things worse?
Wow, that's a great question. I can say that it is possible if you are directly addressing your grief, if you are implementing these choices to move forward and having the courage to face your own grief, then yes, it is possible to come alongside someone else. You don't have to fix them. You're just sharing the tools that have been helping you of understanding what grief is and how important it is to realize we have unfinished business and to start addressing it.
Great. One more question from Megan. She says, can you explain more about the responsibility? So you said our response, our responsibility, and small steps.
Absolutely.
Can you unpack that a bit more?
Sure. So we use the example of going on a picnic. It's a beautiful sunny day, and we've got our picnic and our blanket. We spread everything out, and we've got it all set up, and then it starts to rain. It starts to rain. It starts to rain. And that's a big disappointment. So whose responsibility is it for how I feel about that picnic? Who do we blame? Do we blame the rain? Do we blame the I can't remember what we're supposed to blame or we're not supposed to blame. But the idea is
ourselves, God.
Yes. Basically, we can take the 1% responsibility in that situation with the rain coming down and decide to be honest and say, oh, I wish this day had gone differently. I am really disappointed. This stinks. I was hoping that I was going to get proposed to today at this picnic blanket, and now my heart feels broken. And it's just that taking the responsibility to directly express out the grief in our heart and not pretend it's fine. If you're not fine with it raining, we don't have to just paint a smile on our face and say, it's fine. We can just say, oh, I'm really disappointed. And then we can keep moving forward with our day.
What does FINE stand for again? You had an acronym.
Feelings I'm not expressing. Feelings I'm not expressing.
I like that.
And it just, when we're acting fine, these things build up and get heavier. And all of a sudden you have a boulder. And just
that looked like a magic trick. We went from stones to boulder. I like that. Another question. How do you start to get from numbness into recovery?
It's really about being vulnerable with someone, getting this training, first of all. And like I said, in the moment when you're numb and you're just far away in your mind, it's bringing yourself back to your five senses. So that would be kind of in the moment. But to also be in an ongoing conversation, maybe someone with training like I have, to take the further steps of grief recovery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kim, a question is, what's the Facebook page called? Is this the Fully Alive Revolution Facebook page or Kim's Facebook page? Rob or Alice?
Now, the one that I shared on my slide is Kim Kukura, Grief Recovery Method Specialist on Facebook. That's the one that I shared on the slide, if that's what the question's asking about.
And we have the Fully Alive Revolution with Duzie. Kim, say it again. I'll type it.
Okay. Kim Kukura, comma, Grief Recovery Method Specialist.
And this is a page or
a Facebook page. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the website for where I was trained is griefrecoverymethod.com. I think it's .com. It's on the slide. I think it is. See?
Okay, I believe it's method.com. We can have a quick look if we need to.
Yeah, I'm taking a quick look. Yep, griefrecoverymethod.com.
Great. All right, we've got that. And then you don't mind, you said you don't mind if they reach out to you in email or contact you in any of these ways?
That would be wonderful. Yes, I'd be happy to reply. Mm-hmm.
And we already lined up for Duzie Live next week when we're talking about the Sturbs with Kim. That's very exciting.
So
and I hope that what we're experiencing today and learning and talking about grief and putting it out there will allow us to feel these feelings and not just be fine and not expressing anything. Mm-hmm. What is your hope, Kim, for all of us during this, like as a takeaway of what we've learned today? What is your hope or your dream for us?
My dream is that any unfinished business that you have, that you would start to become aware of it and start to be able to express it out and move toward completion so that you are free to live in the present moment with love and without fear. That's my hope.
Present with love and no fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that's how we were designed to live.
Yeah, if we can all do that, that'd be great.
Yeah. May I issue, I'll say, a challenge for next week for folks who are coming back for Sturbs?
Yes, please.
Okay. And it's not so much a challenge as just, well, maybe. I would ask that you start to observe your own life in this next week and start noticing if there are patterns when you're feeling uncomfortable or feeling sad, like as you start to identify your feelings, what is it you're reaching for? What is your go-to? And just start becoming aware. There's no guilt or shame in this. This is simply becoming aware that there might be Sturbs operating in your life.
So when you mean reaching for it, something we do or think or say, patterns in our life.
Yes. It could be, for me, it's often a cookie. That's why my husband won't buy them anymore.
Megan says hers is chocolate and sleep. She's already identified.
All right.
Anybody already know what your Sturb is? You can type it right in.
Yeah. So that's just something to be just observing in the coming week.
Mm-hmm. And what do we do with that observing?
You can journal, you can draw, you can paint, but just if you want to come just with that awareness next week. You don't have to share it if you're not comfortable sharing it. But if you just want, I would ask you to come with the awareness next week.
Megan has another example, fantasy movies, something that takes me far away from reality.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I know other people have music, exercise.
Yep. Again, these are very morally neutral things. It's just when we're using them to avoid is when they become unhealthy.
And Alice says chocolate, snacks, needing to do something else that distracts. I think they're getting the idea, aren't they?
Yeah. You got it.
And you're going to help us know what to do to be healthy in our grief and not have these stirbs that damage us.
Yep. And awareness is the first step.
Yep. Alcohol is another one.
Oh, yeah. I can relate. I can relate to many of these.
Yeah, that's great. We're being honest out here. I love our community that can just put it right out here. This is a safe place to just ask the real questions and talk about it and give honest answers.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
It's good. Well, I think we've come close to the end of our time. Thank you.
You might get one in your ear there.
Susie's earphones don't fit me, and she has stolen mine with permission. But thank you so much for taking this time, Kim. And we look forward to next week for sure.
We also have Duzie live and at 2:00, and this is like 3.5-ish hours. Yeah.
And one of the things that caused me deep grief is when sound doesn't work.
Sorry.
And
your worst
my
nightmare.
insides are just all over the place right now, but I'll get through it by 2:00.
Yeah,
I hear you, Dan.
I'd like to say a big thanks for Dan to setting this up and running around with new plugs and unplugging. And he made it happen. And sorry for the echoes. This is definitely not our normal, so we're not quite sure what happened. But thank you all for joining us live here for Duzie Live. Good grief with our special, amazing guest, Kim Kukura, a grief specialist here that's just helping us start to unpack what's going on here. And I also just want to say, Rahel has a great comment here. She said, I started to listen to positive affirmations before going to sleep. And it includes, I will only intake the food my body needs to stay healthy. And now I start to miss eating so much chocolate. I did eat some today and it did not taste good. So she's retraining her brain.
Always buy bad chocolate. Always.
So there's a lot of thanks here. Thank you to us and Kim, and thank you everyone. It's been super helpful. And again, we have a Duzie Live Good Grief at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can send the registration link if you found this was very valuable for you. You can come back. Many people do. Or you can send the link to someone else. You can watch the replay at any time, those of you who are here.
2:00 has a different name, though. It's called Good Grief with Good Sound.
Little subtitle there. Yeah, Kim, thank you so much for sharing your life, your expertise, and your amazing content and responses. We have been so valued by having you here.
Thank you. Thank you, courageous people. It's wonderful to spend time with all of you.
And remember Kim's challenge for us for next week. Observe or notice our patterns. When we're feeling anxious or conflicting, any of our conflicting emotions, then notice what we do with it, what we reach for, what are some of our patterns. And we're looking forward to the next level, Kim.
Me too.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to be doing the challenge too.
God bless you. We'll see you at the next Duzie Live, Good Grief at 2, or next week for Grief Stirbs. I don't know what we're exactly calling it yet. Well, we'll find a name for it. God bless you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.